All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are climbing into some seriously thin air.
Oh, yeah.
You guys sent in excerpts from John Krakauer's Into Thin Air,
A classic.
a first-hand account of the 1996 Everest tragedy.
Right.
So we're talking perilous landscapes and that crazy drive of human ambition.
Yeah.
And the sometimes kind of murky world of commercial mountaineering.
Yeah, it's a story that, it really gets to the heart of what draws people to Everest, even knowing the risks.
Exactly. And just to kind of set the stage, Krakauer is a journalist and an experienced climber who was assigned to cover the growing commercialization of Everest for Outside Magazine.
Yep.
He joined Rob Hall's Adventure Consultants expedition, aiming for the summit himself.
Yeah.
But as many know, a massive storm-trapped climber is high on the mountain, leading to several deaths, including those of the very experienced guides, Rob Hall and Scott Fisher.
Right. And what's so fascinating about Krakauer's book is that it's not just an adventure story. It really digs into the why behind the events.
Yeah.
The contributing factors, the ethical considerations, and the impact this whole experience had on Krakauer himself.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
I think most people kind of get the basic allure of Everest. I mean, it's the tallest mountain in the world.
Yeah, because it's there.
But Krakauer seems to be exploring something even deeper.
Absolutely. I mean, he compares his own fascination with Everest to what pushed climbers like George Mallory.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's there.
Right.
But it even goes beyond that.
Yeah.
He also talks about the Seven Summits trend, that ambition to climb the highest peak on each continent.
Right.
So Everest is like the ultimate prize.
The ultimate prize, which makes the inherent dangers of the mountain even more striking.
Oh, totally.
You can't talk about Everest without mentioning the death zone.
Right above 25,000 feet, the human body starts to deteriorate rapidly.
Really?
Oxygen is scarce, judgment gets cloudy. And the risk of serious altitude sickness is just incredibly high.
Yeah.
I mean, Krakauer paints this really vivid picture.
Yeah.
Of just how hostile that environment is.
It's almost like this irresistible force meeting this, immovable object.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
On one hand, you have this magnetic pull drawing people to Everest.
Right.
And on the other, you have this, incredibly unforgiving environment pushing back.
Totally. And right in the middle of that whole dynamic is the rise of commercial expeditions.
Yeah.
Which is really at the heart of Krakauer's story.
Okay, so let's talk about these commercial expeditions.
Okay.
We have Rod Hall leading Adventure Consultants.
Yep.
And Scott Fisher leading Mountain Madness. What were their approaches like?
Well, they were both, highly experienced climbers, but they definitely had different philosophies and operational styles.
Yeah.
So Hall was known for being very meticulous and organized.
Okay.
Almost military-like in his approach.
Wow.
Fisher, on the other hand, was more relaxed and believed in giving his clients more autonomy.
Interesting. So you can already see how these contrasting personalities might lead to conflict.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially in such a high-pressure environment.
For sure. And Krakauer's book does a great job of capturing that tension that sometimes existed between the teams.
Yeah.
But what I found particularly interesting was the diversity of the clients themselves.
Oh, yeah. You had everyone from, seasoned mountaineers to people who had saved up for years to be there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's fascinating how Krakauer kind of weaves in those personal stories, like the postal worker Doug Hansen, who was determined to reach the summit after having to turn back the year before.
That's right. It really humanizes the story.
Yeah.
And it adds another layer to the whole debate about the commercialization of Everest.
Right.
I mean, you have Edmund Hillary, the first person to summit Everest.
Right.
Criticizing these commercial expeditions, saying they're disrespecting the mountain.
Wow.
And then you have Rob Hall arguing that his clients are committed and well-prepared.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
No, it's not.
Even Krakauer himself admits to feeling conflicted about being part of a guided expedition.
Oh, yeah.
His personal climbing ethos kind of clashed with this idea of paying for assistance on such a monumental peak.
Totally. It really gets to the heart of what it means to climb Everest.
Right.
Is it about conquering the mountain, or is it about the personal challenge and the journey?
I think Krakauer's account suggests it's a lot more nuanced than just reaching the top.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And speaking of journeys, the trek to base camp is a story in itself.
Oh, yeah.
Krakauer doesn't gloss over the challenges they face even before reaching the mountain's base.
No, he doesn't.
He talks about the Khumbu Icefall.
Right.
This treacherous section of the climb filled with towering, unstable ice formations called seracs.
Yep. And he even tells a story about an injured Sherpa needing to be carried down from Camp 2.
Wow.
It shows just how difficult rescue operations can be at such high altitudes.
Yeah, it really highlights how dangerous this whole endeavor is, even before you factor in the summit push.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's important to remember that Krakauer isn't just observing all this from like a detached perspective.
Right.
He's battling his own physical and mental challenges.
Oh, for sure.
You can really see that in his descriptions of dealing with that debilitating headache at base camp.
Yeah.
And his reliance on Dimax.
Yeah. And that conversation he has with his wife where he admits to having doubts, it's incredibly relatable, even for those of us who aren't seasoned climbers.
Oh, absolutely. It's a reminder that even experienced climbers feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
And experience fear.
And speaking of vulnerability, there were already red flags popping up before the summit push even began, right?
Oh, yeah.
Concerns about other teams, tensions between individuals.
Yep.
It feels like there's this underlying sense of unease even before things get really bad.
Absolutely. You have Ian Woodall, the leader of the South African team.
Okay.
Who was known for his controversial behavior and disregard for safety protocols.
Yeah.
And then there was the incident with Ingrid Hunt, a doctor on another expedition, struggling to evacuate a sick Sherpa.
Right.
It shows how individual decisions and team dynamics can have this like ripple effect on the entire mountain.
And this is all before they even attempt the summit push.
Yeah.
It seems like Krakauer is deliberately building the sense of impending danger.
Oh, it's masterfully done. He's dropping these little hints along the way, almost like foreshadowing what's to come.
It's making me anxious just thinking about it.
Well, buckle up, because this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
The story takes a much darker turn from here.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of simmering tensions, personal doubts.
Right.
A few red flags already waving.
Yeah.
But now the teams are preparing for the main event, the acclimatization process leading up to the summit push.
This is where Krakauer's account really dives into like the physiological challenges of high-altitude climbing. Yeah. It's not just about physical strength.
Right.
It's about how your body adapts or doesn't to the thin air.
He describes these rotations up and down the mountain.
Yeah.
Each one pushing a little higher as absolutely grueling.
Oh, for sure.
Even for experienced climbers, it takes a toll.
It does. And you see that toll playing out in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, Krakauer talks about his own battles with fatigue and headaches.
Yeah.
Those moments of self-doubt kind of creeping in.
Right.
And then you have someone like Doug Hansen, the postal worker, for whom this was a second attempt.
Right.
After having to turn back the previous year.
Yeah.
I mean, his determination is almost palpable.
I was struck by how Krakauer captures that mix of determination and vulnerability.
Yeah.
These are people pushing themselves to the absolute limit, both physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, comes the big decision, when to go for the summit.
Yeah.
You'd think it would be straightforward, but Krakauer reveals just how much coordination and sometimes conflict goes into choosing that date.
It's a huge decision.
There's a lot at stake, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've got multiple teams on the mountain, all with their own goals and schedules.
Right.
And then you have to factor in things like weather forecasts and the availability of Sherpa support for fixing ropes. It's a logistical puzzle.
Absolutely. And as you might imagine, not everyone plays by the same rules.
Oh, no.
Krakauer talks about Ian Woodall, the leader of the South African team, who refused to commit to a specific date.
Oh, wow.
Which just added another layer of complexity to the situation.
It's interesting how those personality clashes we talked about earlier start to have real-world consequences as the pressure mounts.
Oh, totally. For sure. Even among the more cooperative teams, there were tensions.
Oh, really?
Like the issue with the rope-fixing responsibilities on the Lhotse face.
Okay.
It was supposed to be a shared task between Hall Fisher and the Taiwanese team.
Right.
But things didn't go according to plan.
Krakauer really highlights those small cracks that start to appear in the facade of teamwork and cooperation as the climb progresses. It makes you realize how fragile those bonds can be in such an extreme environment.
For sure. And all the while, you have this building sense of anticipation and anxiety.
Right.
I mean, Krakauer himself talks about his own fears, about performing in the death zone, even with his experience.
Wow.
There's a passage where he even considers abandoning the climb altogether.
Really?
It's a powerful reminder that everyone, even the pros, have those moments of doubt.
It's almost like the mountain itself is testing them pushing them to confront their deepest fears.
It really is.
So finally, after all the preparation and last-minute adjustments, the summit push is set for May 10th.
Right.
You can almost feel the collective breath being held as the climbers set off into the darkness.
Yeah, it's a powerful image.
Krakauer's descriptions of that climb are so vivid.
They are.
He doesn't shy away from the physical and mental strain, the sheer effort it takes to put one foot in front of the other at that altitude.
He talks about the bottlenecks that formed at key points like the Hillary Step, where climbers had to wait their turn to navigate this near vertical rock face.
I can't even imagine.
It's just crazy the level of patience and focus required in those conditions.
And the whole time they're battling oxygen deprivation, right?
Oh, yeah.
Each breath is a struggle.
Absolutely.
And clear thinking becomes increasingly difficult.
Krakauer describes his own mental state as detached.
Wow.
Almost dreamlike.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of how altitude affects not just your body,
right,
but your mind as well.
And then just as the first climbers are reaching the summit, the weather takes this dramatic turn for the worse.
Yeah, the classic Everest nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
A storm that wasn't predicted rolls and visibility plummets.
Oh, no.
Snow starts falling, and the wind whips across the mountain with ferocious intensity.
So the climbers who just moments ago were experiencing the elation of reaching the top of the world are suddenly fighting for their survival.
Yeah, Krakauer paints this chilling picture of the disorientation and confusion, the struggle to find their way back down in the blinding snow.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly things can change on Everest.
Totally.
How nature can assert its dominance in an instant.
And this is where things really start to unravel. Krakauer, struggling with his own oxygen depletion, misjudges the situation with his guide Andy Harris.
Right.
He doesn't realize how critical Harris's condition is.
Wow.
And it's a mistake that will haunt him.
That part is heartbreaking.
It is.
It's a tragic reminder that even the most experienced climbers can make fatal errors in judgment when they're exhausted and oxygen deprived.
And meanwhile, Beck Weathers, another client on the expedition, is battling his own terrifying ordeal.
Right.
His vision, already impaired, deteriorates rapidly in the storm.
Oh, wow.
He's basically clinging to the rope, following the footprints of the climber ahead of him.
It's a testament to his willpower, but it also makes you question the wisdom of pushing yourself to that limit, knowing the risks.
As the storm intensifies, the climbers become separated. Small groups huddle together, desperately trying to find shelter from the wind and snow.
Krakauer's account of that night on the South Col is harrowing.
Oh, it's terrifying.
They're lost in the blizzard, their oxygen supplies dwindling, the temperature plummeting.
Yeah.
It's a scene of absolute chaos and despair.
But in the midst of all this darkness, there's a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
Anatoly Bukreev, the Russian guide, emerges as a true hero.
Wow.
He had descended from the summit earlier and defied the elements to go back out and search for the stranded climbers.
That's amazing.
It's an incredible act of bravery. Krakauer describes how Bukreev, incredibly strong and well-acclimated, ventured out multiple times, risking his own life to save others.
It's incredible.
He managed to locate several climbers, including Pittman Fox and Madsen, and guide them back to the tents.
That's amazing.
But tragically, not everyone could be saved as the storm raged on the true extent the disaster began to unfold.
That moment when the storm finally subsides and you start to realize the impact of what happened, it's just devastating.
Yeah.
Krakauer wakes up at Camp 4 to this grim reality.
Right.
Andy Harris, Beck Weathers, and Yasuko Namba are missing. Scott Fisher is unaccounted for.
Right.
And Rob Hall is stranded high on the south summit, barely clinging to life.
It's a real gut punch.
Yeah. And what follows is this desperate race against time.
Absolutely.
With rescue attempts hampered by, the lingering effects of the storm, communication breakdowns, and just sheer exhaustion.
And, there's one detail that I found really unsettling.
Yeah.
Krakauer mentions that Ian Woodall, the leader of the South African team, refused to share his powerful radio.
Wow.
Which could have been crucial for coordinating the rescue efforts.
It's a stark reminder of how, in a crisis like this, individual actions or inactions can have a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's the tragedy of Rob Hall, those final radio transmissions, his confusion, the emotional call with his wife.
It's heartbreaking.
Knowing that he's trapped up there, unable to descend on his own.
It's one of the most poignant parts of the book, for sure.
It is.
I mean, here's this experienced guide, meticulous in his planning.
Yeah.
And he's ultimately defeated by something beyond his control.
Yeah.
What's even more tragic is that he had oxygen.
Really?
But his mask was frozen, making it unusable.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And then Krakauer himself makes this heartbreaking discovery.
Yeah.
He mistakenly believed he'd seen Andy Harris at Camp 4 during the storm.
Right.
Which gave false hope to Harris's family and friends.
Oh, that's awful. It's just a cruel twist of fate.
Yeah.
The combination of altitude exhaustion and just the chaos of the storm just completely distorted his perception.
And then against all odds, Beck Weathers stumbles back into Camp 4.
Right. Talk about resilience.
Yeah.
Left for dead on the South Call, he somehow regained consciousness and manages to walk back to camp.
Wow.
Even though he's severely frostbitten.
It's a story of incredible resilience, but it also makes you question the wisdom of pushing yourself to that limit, knowing the risks.
Totally.
Krakauer describes Weathers' appearance as truly shocking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his face is blackened from frostbite, his hands frozen solid.
Yeah. It's a powerful testament to the human will to survive, but also a stark reminder of the price Everest can exact.
Absolutely.
Evacuating Weathers from the mountain takes a Herculean effort.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple teams are involved battling exhaustion and the ever-present dangers of the Khumbu icefall.
Right. And then there's the ethical dilemma faced by a Japanese team.
Yeah.
Climbing on the other side of the mountain.
Right.
They encounter a dying climber from the Indo-Tibetan Border Police expedition during their ascent.
It's a gut-wrenching scenario.
It is.
To help a dying climber continue pushing for the summit.
Right. Yeah.
And in this case, they chose the latter.
It really underscores those moral complexities that can arise in these extreme environments.
And in the aftermath, there's this media frenzy.
Oh, yeah.
Krakauer, thrust into the spotlight, describes the struggle to process what happened and his own role in the tragedy.
It's a raw and honest look at survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
The search for meaning in the face of loss and the weight of responsibility that comes with telling such a harrowing story.
So after going on this journey with Krakauer, what do we take away from it all?
Well, I think Into Thin Air forces us to grapple with some big questions.
Yeah.
About risk responsibility and the limits of human endurance.
Right.
You know, the 1996 disaster was a confluence of factors.
Yeah.
Unpredictable weather, overcrowding, human errors and judgment, and perhaps a touch of overconfidence.
But as Krakauer so vividly illustrates, Everest itself remains the ultimate decider.
Yeah.
It's a mountain that demands respect, humility, and a very clear understanding of the risks involved.
Absolutely.
And then there's the ongoing debate about the commercialization of Everest.
Right.
Should it be accessible to anyone with the financial means, even if it increases the risks for everyone?
It's a question that continues to divide the climbing community.
And finally, there's the question of motivation. What is it that drives people to risk everything for a chance to stand on top of the world?
Right.
Krakauer explores that drive.
He does.
The ambition, the thirst for adventure, the desire to test one's limits. He even suggests there's a spiritual element to it, a search for something transcendent.
That's a really powerful thought.
It leaves us with one final question to ponder.
Right.
Would you still climb Everest knowing what you know now? And what price are we willing to pay for our dreams?
That's for each of us to decide.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Thin Air.
Absolutely.
It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it.